We have to start with a new canto, but just before that, a few words. In Sri Aurobindo's writings, there is something very interesting. Of course, many things are interesting, but one of them is that Sri Aurobindo is a Trikaldarshi, and this comes through in all his writings. So when he speaks about the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the Gita, it looks as if he is also looking at the future simultaneously and bringing the two together. So very often in the Gita, he would speak of the integral Godhead, the coming dawns, and that's why the mother says that after his writing of the essays on the Gita, the action of Gita has become even more prominent. It always had a liberating effect on mankind. So it opens now the doors to transformation. Same thing we see in the Vedas and the Upanishads. Otherwise, the traditional interpretation is only going behind and living in the past, that the Vedas were given by Brahma and his four heads, and there are four Vedas, and then interpreting each of them according to the rishis in the past. But suddenly it looks, when we read that Sri Aurobindo is speaking about the future as much as about the past. Similarly, when we read the Life Divine, which is actually something about the future, we see a whole past which he picks up and integrates with the future. This is very interesting. And when we read the Human Cycle, which is more about the present state of humanity, he will bring the past and the future together in the present and open the road. So this is an remarkable, and the term that I use for it is Trikaldarshi writing. There is no other word for it. So we see in Savitri too, Savitri is a vision of the future. And the mother said that maybe after 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, we'll understand its full import, because we'll be able to live a little bit of that consciousness. So the love that Savitri embodies is not an ordinary human love. It is not a mortal love at all. It is the love of the immortal, or better still, the love of the divine. So now we see the image, how beautifully it comes. The love of the divine for mortality, for creation, for all those who are struggling and suffering. It is that love. And that is why at the human level, till we embody that love and it can have a free play in creation, which will be after truth consciousness has established itself, till then this love finds its closest peer in the love of the master for the disciple, and in the disciple the love of the disciple for the master. Only there it touches that intensity, but much more the love of the master for the disciple, where unconditionally he loves, where he loves us in our totality. And when mother takes the burden of a disciple on herself, or the child, better still, on herself, it is not just the soul. Sometimes she has taken, and there are not one instance, number of instances, where she has not only taken the burden of the soul and the disciple's progress, but also of his material needs, also of his relatives, of the family, and so on and so forth. It is something very amazing. There are so many instances where, because one person was touched, she called a whole. This is what we find in Sri Aurobindo's writings, this integral touch. So we see in Savitri, she is saying, I don't just love his soul. If she just loved Satyavan's soul, then she should have stopped. That I know how to die and I can transcend beyond the pyre and the grave. In any case, our love is immortal even if death comes. She doesn't say that only. That is true. But she says, I love even the body. Now this is something amazing. And this is how the mother has changed the balance, the way with which so far we have been reading about divines dealing with our humanity, even the very body. And these things are given as glimpses in our own scriptures. For instance, the story of Arjuna's Rath. Of course, he was a specially chosen one whom Sri Krishna protects. And in mother's life, so many stories when in dining room, steel plates came. So disciples were very happy that now we have steel plates instead of the porcelain. And they went very happily to the mother. And mother said, why? I want my children to have food in golden vessels. We cannot imagine that it's an integral love. So we see that here, that it's not only his soul. Satyavan is who? There is a Satyavan in all of us. It's not just the soul. She takes care of everything. She says, even those who have revolted and gone away, I hold myself responsible for them. Who can love like this except the divine? So, Savitri is summarizing in her own life the love of the divine for the mortal kind who is struggling with death, ignorance, etc., and comes to give us relief. So, we see that this story applies at both levels. On one side, the ideal love which can exist, but that love will take 300, 400, 500 years. But closer still to us, it is the love that the divine avatar, the mother, has for her creation, for her children. That whatever may happen, even if my child is a cipher, in fact she has said, no child of mine can be a cipher. So even if the child is good for nothing, and everybody would tell her, what you have chosen, you should have chosen Swami Vivekananda. That's exactly what Nirodha wrote to Sri Aurobindo. You should have chosen such disciples. And Sri Aurobindo says, as to the disciples, I agree, but once my heart has chosen, it chooses not again. It doesn't abandon. This is what we see in Savitri, and she can do it because her will is one with the eternal will. Her love is one with the divine love. And humanity has to climb to that state. But the queen is still struggling with her ignorance. She is, after all, a human mother. She has her own care and concern. She is a sattvic lady. For her, things are very clear-cut. This is world, that is God. And God is all calm and peaceful. This world is all turbulent and stormy. And everything that is part of this world, including emotions, everything is all nothing but ignorance. And if there is any light in this ignorance, it is the light of reason, which is the highest. So, that is her standpoint. Now when she hears Savitri's final word, that no, I have chosen. And I cannot change. Fate can change. I will change fate. This is how the mother loves us. She will struggle with fate to change it. But she's not going to give up upon any of us simply because, we are bad eggs in the basket. So we see Canto 2, the way of fate and the problem of pain is silence, sealed the irrevocable decree. See, every line of Sri Aurobindo is wonderful. Very often when there is a decree, it is sealed by a tathastu. But this decree has to be sealed by silence. It is an ominous decree. Satyavan must die. The word of fate that fell from heavenly lips, fixing a doom no power could ever reverse, unless heaven's will itself could change its course. So this is how the irony is introduced into it. Unless heaven changes its course, or so it seemed, yet from the silence rose one voice that questioned changeless destiny. Now, this is interesting and important. That the queen, though she is still human, still a voice of ignorance, she has a quest. This quest is born in this adverse moment. She plays a very interesting role here in Savitri. We don't even know her name. At least the master has not given her name in this plot because she is all of us, our outer nature. Just as Satyavan is our soul, so she is all of us. And yet, because she has a quest, because she questions, she challenges, she receives an answer. So it is so important to raise this quest. She does not blindly accept. A will, one voice that questioned changeless destiny, a will that strove against the immutable will. A mother's heart had heard the fateful speech that rang like a sanction to the call of death and came like a chill close to life and hope. End of life and hope. Death. So that's why they say that, very often life is a vanity of vanities, because it's in the end, it collapses into death. Yet hope sank down like an extinguished fire. She felt the leaden, inevitable hand invade the secrecy of her guarded soul and smite with sudden pain its still content. So, like all sattvic people, there is certain degree of calm, quietude, gladness that sattvic natures have. But extreme adversity can even destroy it. This is time and again comes in many of our scriptures, and so very often it's misunderstood. Like Yudhishthir, he was a very sattvic natured man, always balanced. He always used calm reason as a guide. He remained peaceful, content, happy, doing the right things, and yet when he plays the game of dice and he begins to lose, then Yudhishthir loses this reason which is guiding him, and ends up doing something which in his normal state he would never do. Putting his wife for stake, who was not his wife. Putting his kingdom at stake, which was not his kingdom at all. He was just a trustee and he knew it. So there are moments when even among the best and the highest, Arjuna for example, one can be overtaken by grief. So Queen is now invaded by that moment of grief and torture. And smite with sudden pain its still content, and the empire of her hard-won quietude. So, sometimes people ask Sri Aurobindo that so and so person who was so good, saintly in nature, why did such a person go away? Why did he have this experience? Why did he suffer this? Sudden mind has taken a different turn. And Sri Aurobindo says that if there is a sattvic control by the mind, it is very precarious. It is not something which is foolproof. Foolproof is only the psychic. When it opens, then there is no problem. But the mind, when it... The history of ashram life is full of... people who had such remarkable possibilities. Someone like Anil Baran, we know. What remarkable possibilities. He would blow the conch shell before mothers coming on the balcony as if to drive away the adverse forces. Sri Aurobindo said that he is the one whose interpretation of the Gita is one of the best, or perhaps the best. He occupied the room in which Sri Aurobindo stayed. All that. And yet, suddenly the activist, the sattvic nature, how it can take a hold. Oh, India, Pakistan must unite. I must form a political outfit which can change things. And, one gets into a trap, very subtle trap. Of course, the divine's grace always accompany. But how much more could be done? So right now, Queen is invaded. She is a sattvic person. She has read the scriptures, practiced calm. But suddenly, something else enters into her and she becomes... fell to the level of human mind. She had risen above. A field of mortal grief and nature's law, she shared. She bore the common lot of men and felt what common hearts endure in time. So very often, people often ask or wonder, why this person who gave such nice advices had to go through this? Well, it can happen. With sattvic natures can give nice advices. And they are genuine. It's not that they are not true. They are true in their own domain. But when something of this nature, a sudden calamity, possibly her only child's death and this child, her own child's future, forcing the death of her husband, it is a tremendous calamity which can beseech someone. Voicing Earth's question to the inscrutable power. So, if we believe that Sri Aurobindo does not know what we experience, now through the Queen's words we will see that not only he knows what we experience, he is voicing that too. He is revealing to us what is in us mute, because very often we inwardly grumble but accept the decree of fate. But deep inside we are unhappy and restless. So here the Queen is voicing it. The Queen now turned to the still, immobile seer, assailed by the discontent in nature's depths, partner in the agony of dumb driven things, and all the misery, all the ignorant cry, passionate like sorrow, questioning heavens, she spoke. So, all the sorrow that remains buried in the depths, the anguish, the turmoil, the torment, which goes on inside. Why me? Why me? Why in my life? Why in my life? Suddenly, the queen voices. So, Sri Aurobindo is voicing to the queen, just as in the Gita, Arjuna voicing the average human pragmatic mind. That is how Sri Aurobindo puts it. So, it is also a grace and a blessing that, there were people who questioned Sri Aurobindo on so many issues, and thanks to them, we have now so many answers, beautiful answers from the Lord. So somebody has to even represent that. So the queen is representing right now the sattvic human mind which questions the ways of heaven, lending her speech to the surface soul on earth. Every line is so marvelous. We can lend our speech is an instrument. So like we lend our instrument. So we can lend our pen to somebody who is going to write a beautiful poem. Or we may lend our pen to someone who is going to pass or sign a false document. So speech also is an instrument which is being lent. Lent to whom? To the surface soul. She uttered the suffering in the world's dumb heart and man's revolt against his ignorant fate. So she is doing a wonderful work of revealing the anguish in the depths of nature. O seer, in the earth's strange twi-natured life, a life where good and evil are intertwined with each other, very difficult to separate. Very often, evil follows in the wake of good. Child is born, everybody is celebrating. Ah, wonderful, future, future. And when the child turns against the parents, what an evil destiny. The same thing. So in this earth nature, there is a twi-natured life. By what pitiless adverse necessity, or what cold freak of a creator's will, by what random accident or governed chance that shaped a rule out of fortuitous steps, made destiny from an hour's emotion, came into the unreadable mystery of time, the direr mystery of grief and pain. Because this is how we have been told. There are stories that Rishi Mandavi had to suffer on a bed of nails for a whole night, because when he was a child, some 10 births back, he had pierced a butterfly with a needle. So he says, what nonsense is this law? For an act done in ignorance, something so trivial, fortuitous steps, I have to suffer as a seer. Now it returns back upon me. And then he says, with all my tapasya, I change the law. This how, these are marvelous stories. And we feel very happy about this. If we are very happy about such karmic theories, then we are not ready for what is going to follow. the meaning of fate, the search for the soul, the yoga for the earth, which Savitri reveals. If we are accepting a fate accompli, this is how it is. If I am suffering, I must have done some great sin. So she asks, what is this? Fortuitous steps. Randomly, casually, in a moment of ignorance, there is ignorance anyways. Suddenly one has felt an emotion, and out of it, such a retribution. Is it thy God who made this cruel law? And the mother says that. That's why she didn't believe in the God of religions. Very often it is, people cut off the of religions. Because the God of religions has been made into a very harsh and cruel entity who is busy only punishing and rewarding. And it seems more punishing. And punishing good people to make it worse. Cruel law. So truly if God is that, then He is not worth worshipping. Because, and even children understand it. Once in a School in Patiala, I was talking to some children, and one child, 10th standard or something, she said, Uncle, I have one problem. I don't believe in God. So I said, good. Tell me which God you don't believe in. She was not prepared for that. She said, a God who punishes. I said, we are on the same page. Very good, excellent. So what God you believe in? Who loves? I said, excellent. We are absolutely fine. There is no problem with that. There was no issue at all. She was quite right. But we hammer into the child's mind. If the child would say, no, you are going against the Shastras. Whether Shastra is written or we have read it or not or understood it is a big thing. But we just believe it. That there is a God who punishes us for something we have done in few births back out of ignorance and chance steps. So the queen has read all this or has been told all this. She said, what kind of God is this? Today she is speaking. She has observed all this. But in her own life, when tragedy strikes us, then we question. We don't question when it happens to others. So with others, when somebody falls and has a fracture, Purana Janam mein kuch kiya hoga, must have done something in past life. When we have a fracture, then we say, you know what happened? I was actually crossing the road. That foolish driver, he didn't, how they drive? He hit me. But when with somebody else it happens, it's always, karma. So queen is right now in that state. Because something is happening in her own life, she questions. But thank God she questions. Or some disastrous power has marred his work, and he stands helpless to defend or save. So sometimes we like to justify God. So how to justify pain and evil in the world? God has not done it. He has done only good things. So evil, Maya came in. Titan came in. Shaitan came in. Kal came in. What to do? Poor God. So she says, okay, fine, they came in. Is he helpless? Why did he allow it? He could have said, no, you're not allowed. I don't accept it. So obviously there is something we don't understand about pain and evil, which of course Narada will reveal. But before he reveals, we have to be ready to receive it. So what the queen is doing through her questions and what Sri Aurobindo is doing through this wonderful speech, he is clearing our mental ground to bring in the new light. So right now the queen is demolishing all the known conceptions and in very, very hard hitting words. That is it the law of God? And then she pleads her case. A fatal seed was sown in life's false start when evil twined with good on earthly soil. This is, you say that man is responsible for his karmas. From beginning itself, evil is and falsehood is pursuing him. That's why Sri Aurobindo's solution is so beautiful. So only divine can think of this solution. He doesn't condemn man as he is going down and down. Man is, mocking everything, but he goes further down. And what he discovers, I found that a falsehood was planted deep at the very root of things. So he discovers it. He says it's not man's fault. He's right from false start. Omar Khayyam beautifully voices it in one of his couplets. O thou, addressing to God, who with pitfall and with jinn, traps, jinn is trap. O thou who with pitfall and with jinn beset the road I was to travel in. Wouldst thou with predestination around, on top of it there is predestination, impute me for my fall to sin. This is a bold, and he was a great mystic in his own right. This questioning is important. Otherwise we carry on the dust of all the so-called old sanskaras which have become distorted and perverted in the human mind. Their truths have gone away. So she is making a clear ground. And then what happened? It started with falsehood. Then first appeared the malady of mind. So man is the problem because mind has come in. So how mind is a malady? We believe that mind is the thing. Wonderful. So what is the malady? Its pang of thought, its quest for the aim of life, it twisted into forms of good and ill. So mind has this tendency to compartmentalize. Life is not compartmentalized. So it's a very profound truth which she has suddenly, because in a moment of anguish, when all the doors have torn open, now her speech is also carrying something of that light, which Narada, of course, will bring to its fullness. Mind separates things into good and evil. That's the only way it can operate, it can handle. Otherwise, it cannot understand things. They have to be distinct, separate. But whose responsibility is evil in a world where there is ekameva dvitiyam? There is none else but ought. He alone exists. So what does the mind do? It twisted into forms of good and ill, the frank simplicity of the animal's acts. This in one of the aphorisms, Sri Aurobindo says very beautifully. He says, when a tiger kills its prey, we do not call it evil or sin. Where the tiger to question his act, it would be evil. It's interesting. The tiger goes and picks up and claws a little baby, making the whole family suffer because his greed for food, a moment's indulgence about food. But when we watch it, we don't say, oh sinner, because the mind has not come in. Now why the mind came in, why this passage, all that will come later. But this is a fact that the natural simplicity of the instinct is lost. And Mother speaks of that the story in the Bible of fall from paradise is essentially the story of the mind's advent upon earth. And she says that there was a time when there was an earthly paradise, and she remembers that she and Sri Aurobindo were there at that time. It's an early humanity where everything was natural, simple, straight and direct, no complication. And that's why perhaps the stories of Tarzan, we like it. It's so simplicity. There is something beautiful and divine about it. Because there is no complexity of the mind which is intervening. His good is a natural good. So, how the mind comes in and we lose the spontaneous. It turned the straight path, hewn by the body's gods. The gods who are hidden in the body, and they've given. As the mother says, a child is born with even an instinct for what it should eat, what it should not eat, what it should take, should not take. But we spoil it. By, to start with cooking this, that, getting chocolate, this, that, by the time, and then, as a reward, food items. So he begins to grow up and thinks my life is meant, aim of life is good food. Because, where did the problem start? As a child, this is what he learnt. That this is the way to enjoy life. So otherwise, naturally it would not come. And she gives example of how animals who are not corrupted by the mind, how I think it was a monkey who was given drinks, alcohol, and the monkey tasted and then he threw the glass with great force at the man who had given him. It's so bitter. But how this is natural, the body rejects. There are many things which if we leave to the body's true instinct, it will do it in a rhythm and a cycle. That's how animals are able to create a balance of nature. But human mind and the vital, they corrupt its instinct and completely pervert it. And many things, not just one thing, but many things. It turned the straight path, hewn by the body's gods, followed the zigzag of the uncertain course. So mind said, no, I'll guide. And then it becomes uncertain. One study says, don't take milk, even if it is dining room milk. But people like me will say, mother has blessed it, faith. Doesn't matter, nothing will happen. See, a third study will say all that is nonsense. Fourth one will say, well, it was commercially motivated. So poor fellow, that's why one of the advices we always give to people, please, if you have trust in the doctor, go to the doctor. Don't Google search on the internet. ask the question. Because you see all kinds of things coming up. It cannot know the truth. And yet, it becomes the guide instead of the body's gods. Of life that wanders seeking for its aim in the pale starlight falling from thought skies, it guides the unsure idea, the wavering will. So Sri Aurobindo is comparing the mind to the light falling from the stars. Imagine a night where there is not the moon, only that pale light falling from the stars, and that is guiding us. No light inside even the houses, nothing. Just that in a forest with the stars we are being guided. What a poor guide it is. And yet, that's all that the mind can do. Lost was the instinct's safe identity, with the arrow point of being's inmost sight. So, a very early humanity has these natural instincts. That's why it's so much easier and natural for even animals and flowers and all these to give themselves so naturally to the divine. And the mother says that there are three approaches to the supramental life. The most complicated is through a certain kind of higher mentality. Not ordinary mind cannot approach, but higher mentality, sage and the seer. The most dangerous is the occult route. So one is the most complicated, the other is the most dangerous. The simplest, easiest and quickest is a certain type of psychic emotion. And she says that is accessible even to the animals and the plants. We see that in Savitri, we have read it, that as she is growing up, all kinds of people came to her. Some of them were, they gave themselves to her and asked no more. Like a flower gives itself to the sun. But mind comes in and says, what is all this giving? But first let me be sure whom I am giving. And whole life one is reading books after books and yet not sure. Because how can we be sure? The more we sound the infinite, the more he appears vaster and vaster. So we read something of Sri Aurobindo, let me first decide whether he is divine or not. So says, this part looks like yes, but this part I am not sure and convinced. Why? Because it contradicts my thinking. As stupid as that. Then after a while, okay, let me read some more. Oh, this looks like, but I don't know, I don't understand this. Whole life one is wavering will on the shore, only counting the waves. So, how about plunging? But the mind does not allow it. Marred the sure steps of nature's simple walk, and truth and freedom in the growing soul. And really we corrupt it. There are some tribes which have such a simple way of, now with the mind what we have done, we have arbitrarily fixed that 18 years of age you are an adult. This is a very, very arbitrary thing. So you see the problems that are coming up. All kinds of problems. And children who behave like adults. But the worst is when they commit crimes. And grisly crimes. And we don't know. They are not adults. So, if a boy of 15 or 16 commits a grave offense like rape or murder, he can only be sentenced for 3 years in a remand home. Now you see what happens. So there have been instances where these children have come out and done worse things. And they are being used now because now this law everybody knows. So criminals use it. Masterminds use it. See, this is how mind works. But how do the tribals do it? So there is a whole Maori tribe. How does it decide that somebody has gone into an adulthood? No age limit. Instinct. So what do? When the child believes, yes, I am an adult now, I must have my own way. So, okay, you sit whole night in a jungle with your eyes closed. If you are alive the next day, you are an adult. As simple as that. Then another tribe which I have seen, Masai Mara, you have to kill a lion to be worthy of being an adult. In ancient India, it used to be Deshatan. Go around, come back, and tell us what you have discovered. These were very simple and natural ways. not 18 years arbitrary cutoff age, because it's some children are, can be at an earlier age, and some never grow into adulthood. So, it's such a weird thing that mind does, the straight, simple instinct. But see how the mind corrupts. So this Masai Mara tribe, earlier they would easily, anybody would click a photograph and they would shy away and smile. So when I had been to this Kenya Masai Mara jungle, so somebody took me there, this is the Masai tribe fellow. So I saw him. They said, you want a photograph? I said, no, it doesn't. All this doesn't interest me. They said, no, you know what? Then the person revealed that now they charge money for it. So they discovered that National Geographic publishes our photograph. Somebody must have told them that, look, they publish your photographs and get a lot of money. So then, I'm talking of some 15 years back. So the rate was $100 for a photograph. Quite a sum. But naturally, people make $1,000 and people used to give it. Good photograph angle, who knows it's going to win. So mind corrupts the straight instinct. Out of some ageless freedom in the growing soul, out of some ageless innocence and peace, privilege of souls not yet betrayed to birth, souls which are still waiting, not yet betrayed to birth, and they live in that state of innocence and peace. They don't know, they are ready to jump into the great adventure of consciousness and joy, and they don't know what it means to be in this darkness. Cast down to suffer on this hard, dangerous earth, our life was born in pain and with a cry. So this is what we keep hearing also. When we are born, we cry, it's a miserable world, look what pain. What kind of a life it is? It's a condemned thing. It's a hell. So this is how the Queen is voicing the average human mind. Although earth nature welcomes heaven's breath, inspiring matter with the will to live, 1,000 ills assail the mortal's hours and wear away the natural joy of life. Earth nature, a baby is born. So this celebration, but 1,000 ills. Every first day is so wonderful. Child is born, there is, celebration. Then suddenly the problem starts. 24 hours he is sleeping for 18 hours. Is it normal? Child is not taking milk properly. Is it normal? The child is suffering pain, gripes. One of the first things that child has to come to grips with is gripes. And though every parent knows that this happens and every doctor assures, but look at the mothers, what they go through. My baby is in pain. So it, although earth nature welcomes, still very soon the problem starts. Our bodies, and then, it's something very interesting as doctors. Our bodies are an engine cunningly made. This, as doctors we know, so many people who have not studied medicine, they believe that doctor is more than God. Honestly, that every problem, there is a solution to the doctor. And doctors also love to play God. So they prescribe. Till finally patient comes and says, Doctor Sahab, kuch fayda ho nahi raha hai. I'm not being helped much. And then a point comes when doctor has to admit his own ignorance and lose his seat of omnipotent divinity. That look, I can't do beyond this. Please learn to accept a little bit of your joint pain or a little bit of breathlessness at 75, 80. It is quite natural. Of course, he shouldn't say that because of old age. That's dangerous. See, sometimes doctors convey it in a very bad way. You are growing old so naturally. No, nobody grows old. Vital never grows old. So one should say, the body, little bit problems come up. After all, the machinery is not the original one. So many nice ways of saying that I am incompetent beyond this. Decent ways. So they are cunningly made. Sri Aurobindo at one place says, even if science were to find all possible ways to cure every possible disease, still death would find its way. Why? Because bodies are an engine cunningly made. Death is one of the stakeholders. So when Vishwakarma was making this engine, Death has said, "Thoda mera rasta rakhna, keep some roots for me. Don't make it such that I just can't enter." Now you see how it works. People often say, why people grow old? Right in the genes it has been inbuilt. They are discovering telomerase. Now what happens if you manipulate that gene? So if you manipulate that gene, people have found that, okay, there is a particular thing in something called as telomerase gene and like a cap, and that caps it. So what if you do it, then there is cancer? They don't die. So it's a challenge. So now they are trying to find ways and means, artificial red blood cells, now they have discovered red blood cells which for, so many days without oxygen, it will carry oxygen inside. So even if you don't breathe for a certain number of days, they will keep, giving oxygen. But there will be no more man, but Isaac Asimov's, the most worst nightmare will come true. But that apart, it is made in such a way that after a certain changeover, there are errors which are introduced spontaneously. That's why, while the plants can change over and grow up to 5,000 years, salamander can cut off its tail and new one can grow in its place. In human beings also, body cells are being replaced. Every 7 years, the entire cells have replaced. So why is it that the new cells, despite the new cells, we grow old? In fact, the mother speaks of this in one of her talks. And scientists have been baffled by this. Why? The reason is that though these cells are new, their genes, the genes at birth are programmed in such a way that after a point, they will start making mistakes. See, mistakes have been introduced in the system. So come what may, the average human lifespan programmed by the genes is around 85 years. So, of course, people die young, they live long, all that is wonderful and there are many, many things to it. But the average, if you take the average, that's how genetic programming is. So, beyond it, it's a lease, extra lease. So, this is how our bodies are an engine cunningly made. So, we'll stop here. Sharp at 6. Come back after 10, 15 minutes. Continue.